What is up, everyone? The day is finally here. Today is opening night for the NHL 25-26 season. We've got a lot to talk about today. Before we get to there, so let's talk about the crazy headlines yesterday. So the Tampa Bay Lightning, four players have been suspended. John Cooper getting fined 25 grand and $100,000 Tampa Bay Lightning being fined because the NHL did not like what they were serving to the Florida Panthers. There's a lot of jealousy and insecurity with the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're just scared and jealous that the Florida Panthers took their, thunder and pride away. I mean, it's just kind of sort of like, the Florida Panthers own the state of Florida. And don't forget, six straight Stanley Cup final appearances, both by the Lightning and Panthers put together along this decade alone. This is going to be a fun season. I know the Panthers are going to be shorthanded for a while. Kachuk, Matthew's going to be gone by until December, and Barkov's going to be gone for the entire season. But no one knows what his time estimate is going to be. But I'll tell you, those new rings, bling, bling, bling. Twice the size as last year's Stanley Cup championship rings. Just unreal. I'm gonna say, this is going to be an interesting game. They're playing the Chicago Blackhawks, and this one's going to be on ESPN at 5 p.m. Yeah, and I'm going to be getting there early to get the picture with the Stanley Cup. It's like old times, been there, done that. And don't forget, you got the Penguins and the Rangers at 8, and then 10:30 you've got the Avalanche and the Kings. And I want to get to another one. This is going to be interesting. Connor McDavid signs a contract extension. Surprised. I'm surprised about how long it is and how much he got. 12 and a half on average, 2-year extension. So the Edmonton Oilers have 3 years for Connor McDavid and that squad to win. I mean, I don't blame for Connor to be loyal and all that, but wow, 2-year extension. I mean, they're on an all nothing time frame. And something tells me, yeah, Edmonton is really, really looking for a goaltender. They want to copy exactly what Florida did for the last few years, but I gotta be very honest. Can Edmonton do it? I don't know. They need a goalie. They need a goalie. And I was pretty surprised that, everyone's going to be like, oh, yeah, Kirill Kaprizov, he got 17 million. Everybody thought McDavid was going to get 20 million for 8-year extension. And speaking of contracts, I was shocked to see Logan Cooley rejecting Utah Mammoth's contract. It was 9.6 million average 8-year extension. That right there, if I would have been Utah, I would have given 10 million a year and it would have been signed deal, seal the deal basically. That right there is, let's just see where his season plays out. And looking at the headlines, looking at the interesting headlines through the day, I mean, I cannot believe, what Tampa Bay did. I mean, that was just ridiculous of them. That was just very childish. Vegas Golden Knights, Alex Petrangelo, he is out for the entire season and the playoffs. So good news for Vegas, they've got some cap space. But the Panthers, they're going to be in a similar situation, with Sasha Barkov. No one knows. And during the ring ceremony last night, Sasha was walking without the crutches. But I'll tell you, you know, could he be the Terminator? Could he be the Terminator? Maybe, but I don't know. Let's just wait and see what happens. That right there, I still think Florida is still a favorite, in my opinion. I still think they are the major, major league favorites for, the Stanley Cup. And I gotta see, it's gonna be interesting tonight. It's going to be a very interesting night. And I forgot to mention that Jake Wallman, the former Red Wing, getting a $50 million contract extension to stay in Edmonton. I mean, Steve Eisman kind of botched it, man. He got like future considerations, and the Sharks got a first round pick out of it. I mean, what the hell? And looking at these numbers and everything else, we're going to see a very unique season. All right. We're going to see a very unique season in the National Hockey League. And I want to talk about my predictions for the Stanley Cup. Okay. I'm going to put the standings out later. The thing I got to tell you, this right here was the hardest Stanley Cup prediction of all time for me. This was tough. This was a very tough, to go through the standings and the gauntlet. This was a tough one. And looking at everything and doing the research and whatnot, I'll tell you, this was a very tough thing to go through. And, I believe this will be basically similar, but I feel like there's going to be a few additions and some or maybe a major subtraction in the gauntlet in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I know we're about, let's see, almost 6 hours away. So I'll tell you, let me give you my verbatim before, after when I get to the rink or whatever, I'll post the predictions. All right. So I'm going to start out in the Western Conference. So basically, I'm going to say, 1, 2, 3 between LA, Edmonton, and Vegas. So it's going to be Vegas, Edmonton, LA. That's going to be your 1, 2, 3. And Calgary, Vancouver, Anaheim, Seattle, and San Jose, those are the non-playoff teams. I'm going to tell you, this was tough. I think Anaheim and Vancouver and Calgary, it's gonna be a close call between them. I'm gonna go Anaheim 4, Calgary 5, Vancouver 6, San Jose 7, Seattle 8. That is my Pacific Division prediction. All right. So in the Central Division, I'm gonna go Dallas number 1, Winnipeg 2, Colorado at 3, Utah 4, Minnesota 5, and St. Louis 6, Nashville 7, Chicago 8. I like to see St. Louis back in the playoff fold, but this is just predictions. This is just predictions. And, it would be tough though. Like, I would like to see Colorado, not make it because I think St. Louis has the goaltending advantage. I mean, Colorado's got the superstar firepower up front and on the back end. Honestly, the goaltending is subpar average. I'm going to tell you, this will be a tough division, and I wouldn't be surprised all like 5 teams make it to the playoffs. And then you've got the Metropolitan Division. That is the weakest division in the NHL. I still think 3 teams are going to make it. The Atlantic's too tough. I'm going to go Carolina at 1. I'm going to go New Jersey at 2. Washington, I'm going to say they will make the playoffs. I'm going to go Columbus, then Washington, then the Islanders, Rangers, Flyers, then Pittsburgh Penguins. Right there. That's a tough one. And, this is going to be very interesting. And I don't know who's going to be the best team in the NHL. I'll give you that determination in a sec. And then the Atlantic Division. I'm going to go Tampa Bay 1. Just because I think Toronto took a step back. I think they are going to be second. I'm going to go Florida 3rd, Detroit 4, Ottawa 5, Buffalo 6, Montreal 7, and Boston 8. Yeah, that's where I'm going to go with that. And the President's Trophy winner of this year's NHL season, I am saying it's going to be the Carolina Hurricanes. They're going to win the President's Trophy. And we'll have to see what happens in the playoffs, but that prediction right there is going to be in a Reels video. Be on the lookout for that later today. And the worst team in the NHL, who's going to get the number 1 overall pick? It's going to be the Pittsburgh Penguins. Penguins, you've got, 20 years of combined experience between the big three, with Letang, Malkin, and Crosby. And it's basically like the last year of this era, and they need someone to succeed, Sidney Crosby. I mean, you heard the rumors. Crosby going to go to Montreal? Is he going to go to Colorado? Is he going to go to the Florida Panthers? I mean, you got Malkin on the block, and this right here will be a very, very difficult. But those ping pong balls are very unpredictable. And I gotta say, speaking of Gavin McKenna, 1 goal, 2 primary assists in his debut for Penn State against Arizona State over the weekend. Impressive indeed. But that plus minus with a -3, not too sexy. I still think Gavin McKenna needs to work on his defensive game so he could be the ultimate player. They're comparing to Nikita Kucherov and Henrik Zetterberg and all, and Pavel Datsyuk, but the kid needs work. All right. The kid definitely needs work. Yeah. So this is going to be a fun opening night. The banner's going to be raised up, and hell, I'll get to go see the Stanley Cup again. Hopefully, I get in time there for the picture. And this is going to be an exciting evening. All right. This is going to be an exciting evening. And looking at everything else, I'm still kind of like, boy, Connor McDavid just got a bridge deal. I'm still shocked by that. And, here's an interesting one. The Florida Panthers signed, you know, former San Jose Shark Noah Gregor to a 1-year, 2-way deal. He earned it. He definitely earned it out of a PTO. And this was pretty much an interesting way to keep the depth going. The guy's got 70 points, 293 games. And basically, the Panthers, like I said, no Barkov, no Kachuk. This is going to be, you know, one of those things. And speaking of Florida Panthers, I want to go back to the rings, though. Wow. The bling, bling, bling. I mean, I just love the quote they used from Conor McGregor. Apologize to no one. I mean, they're ruthless. They're savages. And I got to say that this Florida Panthers team, I still think they have a lot left in the tank. Everyone's telling me, oh, you're being biased. And you still think they could pull it off? I mean, act like they've been there before. I mean, Aaron Ekblad was out of the lineup. Montour was out of the lineup. This was like a few years ago in 2023. I believe that this Panther squad is ready to defend their Stanley Cup. It doesn't matter what seed are they in. Are they the first, second, third, or a wild card team? It doesn't matter at this point. The Florida Panthers, this team is unstoppable. But the $1 million question is, you know, they need to get Bob a Brad Marchand deal. That is the key. And this right here, guys, I'm like really excited for this. I'm really am. And looking at, at everything else, and I looked at some of the power rankings. This right here is gonna be a tough one. And I would say, it doesn't matter where you're ranked. It's all about the play, like the way you play the game and how you finish. That's going to decide how this 6-month journey to the Stanley Cup playoffs begins. It's the beginning of a new journey. Yeah, I'm telling you guys, this is going to be a very unique journey, and I wouldn't be surprised. And looking at these numbers, anything is possible at this point. Anything is possible at this point. And I'm just stoked and excited for home opener. All right. This is going to be a fun night. This is going to be one of those nights, but, anywho, I still think that, anything in the Stanley Cup playoffs, we're long, long ways away. And I got to tell you, This is going to be a very tough season for all these teams. And be on the lookout this afternoon for my Stanley Cup predictions for the state. I'm just going to be putting on the Reels video, guys, and you'll be surprised. But if you called me biased, who knows? You know, I still think Florida's got a chance, but the Stanley Cup's up for grabs. This is going to be a very tight but tough 25-26 season. I want to wish everybody good luck. Let's have some fun tonight, all right? And don't forget, new episode coming on the air tomorrow for 2 minutes in the box with Gordo. Have a great rest of the day.